Hello and welcome. I'm Master Lama Rasaji, and this is our Tuesday edition of Rasaji Speaks. Hope you had a great Monday. Lesson today is leading with trust, contemplating the courage that King David, his faith in God. A lot of times we look to big levels of faith. Of course, David standing up to the giant Goliath. When I realized David was smaller than Chin is today, he was probably 5'4", 5'5", teenager. Amazing. Look at Daniel's courage in the lion's den. Mary being pregnant by the Holy Spirit. What kind of faith is that? I look back in my own life and I remember different levels of courage coming in. The courage when I was scared to death to perform, and one day my ballet mistress said, open up and go for it. Took courage, took faith that that would be okay. I remember another time, and some of our teachers are going through this right now. I remember I was working for my dad's second time, and I was raising money for the first time to go to India. I'd already been to Tibet. Of course, I was much stronger. There's no question about it. But I remember I was early into my first marriage, actually was getting ready to get married, and which was kind of a crazy decision on one level when you look back. I remember marching in my dad's office one day and telling my dad, this is not for me, Dad. I need to go. And he says, you're going to leave a sound job with a stable revenue, with a bonus, with a truck or car allowance, and to do what? I said, I'm going to go teach Tai Chi Gung. And he said, what? What the hell is that? I said, well, I went to Tibet. Now it's time for me to teach. He says, well, what are you going to make? I said, I don't have any idea. I said, next month will be my first month. And I decided to throw it all to the wind. When I look back today, it seemed right at the time. When I look back today, that was an amount of faith and courage. I mean, I had a $2,000 a month, early 1980s, just back from Tibet, salary. I had $300 or $400 a month petty cash account that I had kind of could do with what I want, when I need, whatever I thought I needed. And then I had a $200 or $300 truck allowance. I remember I had an Isuzu little white pickup truck, little Isuzu pickup truck, burned almost no gas. It was amazing. 4-cylinder. It was just a little scooter put. Stick shift, 5-speed, so you can imagine manual control. And I went in and said, I'm gone. I love you, but I've been trying to tell you before I went to Tibet, and I'm telling you after, this is just not for me. Road contracting doesn't interest me. I'm happy that you found passion with it, so I got to go do my passion. And I went out, and my soon-to-be wife goes, oh my God, who am I marrying, right? Who am I getting ready to marry? Well, I didn't have probably the best ideals about making money at the time. I was still working through poverty consciousness. Pretty well had the spirituality and the health thing worked out pretty good. But I was still battling through there. But I was going to do what Bo Yang said to do. And that is when I asked him what being an entrepreneur was. He says, you don't know what you're going to make each week. You don't know what you're going to make each month, if anything. You have to depend on the Almighty. No other human, that the Almighty will put the people in your pathway. I remember I went from $2,000 a month and all those extra perks to like $300, 345. Well, 4 and 5 is 9, and 12 is 21, and it was the Trinity. And was assigned to me. Oh my God. My fiance says, "Oh my gosh, am I really going to marry this guy?" You can imagine she was a daughter of a Filipino anesthesiast, and he was doing about $800,000 a year. Yeah, he was doing $800,000 a year. Sorry about the interference. Can you imagine 800,000? I did not know that at the time. I found out about it later, but imagine the contrast. I'm going to marry a starving artist. Had to be going through her mind. Next month, it was $800. And then it was $1,200. In 6 months, I was making more money than I left my dad. And with all the tax benefits and tax-friendly write-offs and tax-friendly revenue, because half the people were paying me with cash. So just imagine where I was going. By the end of the first year, I think it was like $2,800 to $3,000. So 6 months later, I had increased cash flow because I decided to surrender to the Almighty. And that was 42 years ago, brothers and sisters. That was really the beginning of real prosperity. But Lamaji didn't know that at the time. But that action, that psychic portal that I wrote, that action, affirmation, changed everything. That was an act of faith. Without question, it was an act of courage. My whole life, the whole doors of prosperity began to open up to me, and it got better and better as we were going. I remember the 18 months later, it was $5,000 a month. That seemed to me at that time as simple as I was living. And that's what I was making when we finally did tie the knot. She couldn't believe I was making that much money. I laughed at her. I remember one day on our first anniversary, I laughed at her. And I said, "Do you know how long I would have had to work with my dad for him to increase my salary for $2,000 to $5,000 a month?" She said, "Well," I said, "Probably like 5, 10 years, closer to 10 than 5. And then he would have felt like he was doing me a favor." The sky I knew that day on that 18th month, 1 and 8 is 9, returned to prosperity. I knew that I had opened a door and I was never going to look back. I was the Italian race car driver. The rear view mirrors were gone and Lamaji was moving forward. I kind of remember that because that's kind of how I feel now, 42 years later. 57 years of training, 42 years of teaching and being an entrepreneur along the way. Learned a few tricks along the way, learned how people think, how they act, not necessarily all go together because that's where they're at. They'll tell you one thing, do another, that kind of thing. But along the way, I thought about Bo Young. Grasshopper, take the pebble and snatch it from my hand, for it is time for you to go. I remember that feeling. Am I really? And I remember, oh my God, he told me I was going to be an entrepreneur. Didn't have the first of 3 sons yet. That was coming. It was around the corner. But I was well on my way to prosperity. How would I know that would create a company called Prosperity for Life and be a part of the Circle of Chi, that a book that I was to write 19 to 20 years later would become a website, would become a community, would do all these things because I, that day, took massive, assertive action and did not look back. It's hard to keep your foot on the riverbank, brothers and sisters, and one foot in the boat and go to higher ground. Sometimes you have to jump in the boat of faith and then move forward. Lamaji had his faith big time tested in that day. Thought I would share that original story with you. As we say in Tibet, Brakabashai to you and to your glorious family. Looking forward to seeing you on Hump Day tomorrow, right? On Rasaji Speaks. God bless you all.